You were not found by accident. Somewhere in the exact shape of your restlessness and your longing, a thin luminous window opened, not to punish, not to demand, but to invite. Presence changes everything, without trying. That is not a slogan. It is a practical truth disguised as a poem. Show up, breathe, and the world begins to rearrange itself around who you are becoming. Right now you might feel a tightness under your ribs, a low-level dissatisfaction, like a shirt that no longer fits. Maybe you've been hustling harder, saying the right things, checking the boxes, and still the life you imagined remains just out of sync. That friction is not evidence of failure. It is the friction of two timelines brushing against one another. The old identity you were given, and the future self already living what you want. They create a small, sometimes painful space. That space is a threshold. It is where everything either softens or snaps. Presence is the lever on that threshold. Not more hustle, not one more strategy, not another bright idea about how to fix yourself. Presence is the quiet force that tunes your internal instrument so the field responds. Presence is the hand on the chest, the deliberate breath, the momentary permission to stop performing and become. When you move from doing to being, you change the pattern that your life has been responding to. Think of the contracts that keep you small as heavy clauses you've signed without reading, a job that pays a rent but drains your voice, a relationship that gives familiarity but dulls possibility, a story in your head that defines the size of your dreams. Those contracts came in useful once. They were stabilizers, adaptations. Now they show up as friction. They keep the narrative coherent, even when coherence keeps you tiny. Presence is the thing that loosens a signature. It doesn't tear the agreement by force. It invites a renegotiation from a different place, from the presence of the person who is already living the next chapter. Mechanics? If you want the simple model without getting lost in jargon, resonance precedes delivery. Imagine dropping a pebble into still water and watching concentric ripples reach the shore. Your state, calm, frantic, hopeful, fearful, sends out those ripples. The field you inhabit is not a person but a medium that responds to vibration. The more coherent your inner signal, the more easily opportunities phase in that match it. Scientists measure shifts in planetary fields and note correlations. Mystics and many who practice presence report that when their inner frequency settles, life begins to feel easier, more aligned. Call it metaphor, call it correlation. The practical part is within your control. You choose your state more often than you realize. This is where your future self becomes your ally. Picture them not as a fantasy, but as an internal guide who is tired of waiting. They send breadcrumbs, a sudden nudge to apply, an inexplicable calm before a hard conversation, repeating numbers, a bright idea that arrives as if from nowhere. Sometimes you hear a quiet sentence in your own voice. Hold on. I'm almost there. I'll bring you with me. That's not a prophecy. It's an invitation to take action from a different center. Let me give you one short example. Maya had been grinding at a marketing job for 4 years. On paper, she was a success. In her bones, she felt hollow. She made plans, took courses, and still every new attempt felt like pushing a boulder uphill. Then she tried something different. 3 minutes each morning before her phone, sitting with her hands on her knees, eyes soft, simply feeling the breath and imaging the day as someone who already had permission to create. She kept it embarrassingly simple. Morning presence, a 2-line intention, and an evening replay where she noticed moments of courage instead of cataloging failures. Within months, people started showing up in her life with the exact kinds of openings she had practiced embodying. Doors didn't slam open because she forced them. They aligned with the signal she had become. That is the pattern of presence. You do not need to believe overnight for things to change. Action precedes belief. The brain learns through repetition. The body accepts what you act into long before your mind writes the new story into its files. Neural pathways strengthen when you choose trust more than fear, over and over in small moments. That is how rewiring happens. Not in a dramatic leap, but in countless quiet choices. Here are 3 concrete practices that anchor presence and are perfectly portable into your life. They are short, simple, and designed to be repeatable. First, the morning 3-minute practice. Before you check a message or become available to everyone else, sit wherever you are. Close your eyes. Keep it to 3 minutes. Feel your weight in the chair. Notice the breath moving through your body, and name one small intention. Not a plan, an identity phrase. Something like, "Today I carry presence," or "I move from my open heart." Nothing to perform, only to be. 3 minutes is long enough to make a new choice and short enough to keep doing it daily. Second, the heart-hand breath. Place your hand over your heart, fingers splayed across the chest or the sternum, whichever feels honest and alive. Breathe in through the nose for as long as feels natural. Breathe out through softly parted lips. With each inhale, imagine receiving. With each exhale, imagine letting go. Repeat for 1 to 2 minutes when you feel caught in old patterns, before a meeting, or after a hard interaction. This is not a ritual for changing the world instantly. It is a reset that signals to your nervous system and to the field that you are available in a different way. Third, the nightly replay with curiosity. At the end of your day, before you scroll, replay 3 moments where you practiced presence or acted with slight courage. Notice what felt different. Speak them aloud or write them. This trains your attention to find evidence of alignment. Over time, your mind will start noticing opportunities that previously passed as background noise. Before we continue, do this with me right now. Place your hand on your heart, breathe 3 deep breaths and whisper, in whatever tone feels honest, "I am ready to receive." Stay with that feeling for a moment, not as an obligation, but as a permission slip to the part of you that has been waiting. When you practice like this, patterns begin to shift. Not because presence is a magic wand that forces outcomes, but because presence changes what you offer to the world. You are different energy. You signal a different possibility. And because the world is made of relationships, with people, with circumstances, with unseen fields, relationships respond to that signal. Doors tend to respond to coherent presence more than frantic effort. That is the central difference between forcing and allowing. Force presses, allowing invites. There is also urgency inside this invitation. Many people report sensing a time window, a period when the field feels more malleable, a symbolic threshold where attention and choice have amplified effect. Some call it a seasonal push, others name it with a date. If you have felt that tug, lean into it as an opportunity to practice presence, not as a deadline that will eternally lock your outcomes. Think of the window as a moment of intensified attention, like a doorway that is easier to walk through when you place your hand on the frame. If you cannot make it through on the first day, the door still stands. What closes is not destiny. What can close is resistance and missed chance for practice. So choose now, not because of fear, but because of love for the future life you want to inhabit. Do not mistake calming language for complacency. Presence carries urgency of a different kind. The call to align now, to take the small steps repeatedly so your nervous system remembers trust. Urgency without panic, reassurance without delay, grace with discipline. There is no need to punish yourself into action. There is a need to stop disguising aversion as wisdom and to be willing to inhabit a slightly larger version of yourself in the small moments. What does surrender mean in this context? It does not mean giving up your power. It means relinquishing the strategy of trying to control every variable and instead orienting toward coherence. Surrender is a wise action. You still choose, you still create boundaries, but you begin from inner alignment rather than from scarcity. Imagine a sculptor working wet clay. If the clay is parched and brittle, the sculptor can bang and force, and something may survive the violence. If the clay is supple and hydrated, the sculptor moves with less effort and releases form effortlessly. Presence hydrates your clay. A brief anecdote that lands the point. Ethan had always been the fixer in his family. He believed effort equaled love. When he applied that to his work and romantic life, the return was exhaustion. He began to practice the heart-hand breath, not to achieve a result, but to practice being, not on the outside, but within. Over months, he stopped volunteering for every rescue. He began to show up differently, full, patient, and quietly available. Opportunities he had chased began arriving in forms that matched his steadier tone. He did not succeed because he stopped trying. He succeeded because his presence made him more recognizable to situations that had been avoiding him. Notice the difference in language. Success did not come as a guarantee. Opportunities became more likely. The field began to offer matches more often. Language matters here. We avoid promises because presence opens possibilities rather than buying outcomes. That nuance protects you from chasing false hopes and keeps you practicing what actually works. Embodied presence. There will be resistance. Your nervous system prefers familiarity, even if familiar is painful. Old beliefs will show up as urgent whispers. You must do more, or this will never happen for you. When they speak, practice naming them without judgment. Recognize the voice, recognize the strategy, and return to presence. Each time you return, you strengthen a new pathway. Each time you return, you prove to your own system that trust is available. There is a practical way to accelerate that rewiring. Choice stacking. That means making small, aligned choices back to back until a critical mass emerges. Choose presence in the morning 3-minute practice, choose the heart-hand breath midday, and choose nightly replay. Those are small commitments stacked together. They are not onerous. They are micro-doses of recalibration. Over weeks, they add up. That is how neural circuits tilt toward trust. I want to underscore one more thing about the window, and symbolic dates you may have heard whispered. Treat dates as amplifiers, not as final verdicts. If December 17th or any other day feels charged to you, use it as motivation to begin with more intensity. But if nothing dramatic happens on that day, do not let disappointment become a story that discredits the entire practice. The real work is the slow tending, the daily presence that generates steady return. Timelines merge over time, not always overnight. The heart of the invitation is simple and urgent. Choose surrender now. Not surrender to fate or to passivity, but surrender to a new way of acting. Act from a different center. Choose the posture of being rather than the posture of proving. That choice changes the geometry of your days. It changes how opportunities bend toward you. Presence changes everything, without trying. Now imagine your life 10 months from now if you begin this way. Not a fantasy portrait with all problems erased. A more honest picture. You have more moments of clear decision. You're less reactive. You notice openings you used to miss. Relationships shift because you bring a steadier energy. Choices that once felt risky now feel like natural steps. That future self is not an unreachable celebrity. It is the collection of small choices you make today. Invite that version of you in. Ask subtly, how would you act now? Then take one small step in that direction. A practical trick for connecting with your future self. Write a 1-paragraph letter from them to you. Keep it realistic, grounded, and kind. Have them describe a small victory and a daily habit that made the difference. Keep it on your nightstand or taped to a mirror. Read it when you practice the morning 3 minutes. It is a breadcrumb, a voice, a future memory pulling you forward. As you make these choices, you will notice 2 common pitfalls. First, trying to perform presence. Presence cannot be forced. If you catch yourself attempting to manufacture a serene posture like an acting exercise, laugh gently at the performance and return to the honest breath. Second, conditional practice. Waiting for the perfect morning to begin. The perfect morning rarely arrives. Start where you are. The 3-minute practice is deliberately short so your life can't find an excuse to avoid it. Let me give you one more concrete moment to anchor this teaching. Wherever you are, place your feet on the floor. Feel grounded. Put your hand on your heart again. Take a breath that fills your belly. As you exhale, say silently, I choose presence. Feel the phrase settle into muscle memory. Repeat this gesture whenever you notice tension. The gesture is tiny. Its effect is cumulative. You may worry that choosing presence is a passive act, that being will let things slide. It is actually the most strategic action you can take. Presence gives you clarity. With clarity comes wiser boundaries, better yeses, and cleaner nos. People who practice presence do not become resigned, they become precise. They stop scattering themselves and begin to move with aligned attention. That precision creates momentum. We must also be gentle with the language of miracles. Many call the unexpected doors and synchronicities they experience miracles. I will say this plainly. Practice increases the probability of meaningful synchronistic events, and sometimes those events feel miraculous. Presence does not guarantee a particular miracle. It enlarges the field of possibility so that what is appropriate can find you. As you step into this practice, remember the posture. Curiosity over judgment, urgency without panic, surrender without resignation. Presence is the hinge between your life as it has been and your life as it wants to become. It is not a project of fixing, it is an invitation to receive. If this message landed with you, continue with one small next step. Download the 3-minute presence guide below, or watch the guided audio that walks you through the morning practice and the heart-hand breath. It is an optional companion, a little support to help you stitch the habits into your days. You have been ready all along. The readiness was always a state waiting for you to inhabit it. Receive that readiness now. Place your hand on your heart, breathe, and allow your body to remember how to be available. Presence changes everything. Without trying, you are ready. Receive.